contest after his 10 years of service in the military to help inspire soldiers and veterans coping with injuries.
Invictus was inspired by the experiences I had alongside our servicemen and women from many nations.
Legitimate project that Prince Harry has, the Invictus Games, the only thing that from start to finish is considered a success that people admire.
Meghan and Harry's motorcade.
From the ashes of war, Prince Harry rose not as a soldier or a spare, but as a man with a mission that the world, no matter how divided, rallied behind. The Invictus Games weren't just another royal event. They were personal, they were powerful, and for Harry, they were sacred. A place where broken heroes could feel whole again, where pain turned to purpose, and where the youngest son of Diana could finally write his own story outside the palace walls. For nearly a decade, the Games were bulletproof, universally praised, untouchable by scandal, and immune to the chaos that followed Harry and Meghan everywhere else. While critics called their Hollywood ventures a cash grab, Invictus was the glowing exception, their golden ticket to credibility. The one thing no one dared to question. Until now, because this time, the story isn't about family feuds, paparazzi invasions, or Netflix deals. This isn't just royal drama, it's financial warfare, with court filings, legal probes, missing millions, and two very powerful people standing in the crosshairs. The Invictus Games, the very project that made Prince Harry more than just a royal, is now facing a storm so massive it could destroy everything he's built since leaving the crown behind. And at the center of it all, a simple but devastating question. Where did the money go? German taxpayers want answers. Veterans feel betrayed. Donors are demanding receipts. And Don Lindsay, the once loyal chair of the Invictus Games Foundation, is now leading the charge, launching what insiders call a no-holds-barred investigation into one of the most explosive financial scandals to ever touch the royal family. It's not a tabloid rumor. It's not a family squabble. This is a full-scale legal reckoning, and Prince Harry may be just days away from watching his legacy go up in flames. But to understand just how far he's fallen, we need to rewind to where it all began. Long before he was dodging headlines and dodging the crown, Prince Harry wore something else with pride: a uniform. As Captain Wales, he served 2 tours in Afghanistan, flew attack helicopters, and stood shoulder to shoulder with men and women who sacrificed everything. It was in those moments, among blood, dust, and camaraderie, that Harry found his purpose, not just as a royal, but as a human being. One story stuck with him more than most: flying home with 3 severely wounded British soldiers, barely clinging to life, wrapped in plastic and hooked to tubes, all in medically induced comas. That flight didn't just change his trajectory, it defined it. From that anguish came an idea, a vision, a calling. In 2014, Prince Harry launched the Invictus Games, a global sporting event for wounded, injured, and sick service personnel.
On stage, opening the same games where 5 years ago they announced their relationship.
Please welcome my incredible husband, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
It wasn't about pity. It was about pride, about resilience, about giving veterans a stage where their scars became symbols of strength. And it worked. From London to Sydney to The Hague, the Games exploded in popularity. Crowds roared, politicians showed up, celebrities backed it, and most importantly, veterans showed up in droves, reclaiming pieces of themselves they thought they'd lost. Media outlets called it Harry's redemption arc, his Diana moment, a cause he didn't just attach his name to, but lived and breathed. It was raw, it was real, and it was his. For years, Invictus stood as the one thing Harry could point to without controversy. Even the harshest tabloids couldn't twist it. While Meghan's Vogue covers and podcast deals drew fire, Invictus was untouchable, noble, pure. And for the Sussexes, it became more than a passion. It became a lifeline. When they stepped back from royal duties, the Games became a shining example of their continued service, proof that they didn't need crowns to make a difference. It offered them cover from critics and access to corporate boardrooms and Hollywood meetings. It was more than just a sports event, it was their brand's moral backbone. But here's the twist. The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. And in 2023, as cameras flashed and banners flew high in Dusseldorf, Germany, the cracks beneath the surface finally began to show. Not to the crowds, not to the press, but to the people inside. People with access to budgets, receipts, hotel bills, contract memos, whistleblowers. What they saw wasn't just poor judgment, it looked like financial betrayal, because what was once Harry's proudest achievement was about to become his biggest liability. It started with pride. The city of Dusseldorf was honored to host the 2023 Invictus Games. German officials greenlit an eye-watering $40 million budget, an investment they believed would showcase not just athletic excellence, but international goodwill. Veterans from across the globe would compete, media would descend, the Sussexes would attend. It was meant to be a masterpiece of military healing. Instead, it's now being called one of the biggest charity scandals in royal history.
In the news this week, and it has been quite eventful. What's the latest?
Because as the final numbers rolled in, something didn't add up. A lot didn't add up. According to internal sources, nearly $30 million, 3/4 of the entire game's budget, was unaccounted for in any meaningful way. And when investigators dug deeper, what they found wasn't just poor spending. It was elite-level extravagance. While wounded veterans scrambled for proper accommodations, many sharing dorms or outdated facilities, Harry and Meghan's inner circle allegedly enjoyed 5-star luxury, lavish hotels, private security convoys, VIP transport fleets, and custom-built media suites. One report estimates that $10 million alone was funneled into accommodations and perks for Sussex-related appearances. But it gets worse. Only 3%, yes, 3% of the entire budget reportedly went toward actual athlete services and equipment. That includes adaptive sports gear, coaching, physical therapy spaces, and basic support infrastructure. And remember, this wasn't private donor cash. A huge portion of this money came from German taxpayers, ordinary working families who believed they were helping veterans, not financing glam squads and photo ops. What was meant to be a show of international solidarity was starting to look like a royal cash grab disguised in camo. As these details emerged, public outrage swelled. Veterans voiced betrayal, sponsors reeled, and donors, they began to pull out, fast. But the damage wasn't just reputational, because the deeper they looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't going to end in a press apology. This was going to court. Behind every scandal is a tipping point, a moment when secrets become threats and insiders decide they've had enough. For the Invictus Games, that moment came when 2 senior executives, seasoned professionals with deep ties to the foundation, began asking uncomfortable questions. They saw invoices that didn't match outcomes, budgets that ballooned with no receipts, costs assigned to media coordination that looked more like production shoots for a Netflix special than a sports event. So they spoke up, and then, almost overnight, they were gone. Sources inside the organization described the firings as brutal, not polite terminations or contract expirations, but a purge. The moment those execs raised red flags about finances tied to Harry and Meghan's involvement, they were reportedly pushed out without warning.
Of empowerment and showcasing their unity.
When I talk to my son Archie about what he wants to be when he grows up, some days it's an astronaut, other days it's a pilot. But what I remind him is that no matter...
One anonymous source said it best. They sniffed the wrong receipts and got burned for it. And these weren't rookies. These were respected voices within the Invictus community. People who had helped build the games from the ground up. Their departure sent shockwaves through staff corridors and a chill through anyone still on payroll. Because suddenly, everything changed. Phones were watched, conversations were hushed, staffers reported walking on eggshells, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Meeting rooms were tense. Whispers about budget irregularities turned into full-on paranoia. And yet, the whistleblowers didn't disappear quietly. Insiders now claim that one of the dismissed executives has a cache of evidence. Emails, financial breakdowns, maybe even voice recordings. The kind of stuff that turns reputational scandals into courtroom showdowns. If those receipts surface publicly, this won't just be about mismanagement. It could expose a full-blown cover-up, one allegedly designed to shield the Sussex brand from scrutiny, even if it meant betraying the very people the games were built to honor. And that raises a terrifying question. If this is what happened to the people trying to protect the games, what else has been hidden? The Invictus Games were never meant to be about royalty. They were meant to be about resilience, recovery, and honoring warriors who came back from the brink. But in Dusseldorf, something shifted. Something insiders now describe as a complete takeover. Because according to multiple sources inside the Invictus Games Foundation, Meghan Markle wasn't just attending. She was allegedly orchestrating. From lighting setups to stage design, from camera placements to media access. It's claimed Meghan had a hand in nearly every aesthetic decision made during the 2023 event. And these weren't harmless touches. These were the kinds of decisions typically made by producers, not patrons. Staffers described it as a Hollywood production disguised as a charity event. And then came the bombshell. Allegations emerged that Meghan flew in her personal glam squad, stylists, makeup artists, wardrobe consultants, all reportedly paid for using charity funds tied to the game's budget. While injured veterans bunked together in basic accommodations, Meghan was allegedly getting full beauty treatments in VIP suites, touched up with designer cosmetics, on money donated for athlete support. And that wasn't the end of it.
Of the Invictus Games CEO Dominic Reed, who's been in the position for basically 10 years since the inception of the Invictus Games, he released a statement which...
Her travel arrangements, luxury accommodations, private security detail, insiders claim all of it was absorbed into the Invictus Games operating costs, buried under vague budget lines like executive services and media operations. Why? Because the real show, some claim, wasn't the athletes. It was the Sussexes. The Duchess reportedly brought Netflix producers with her under the pretense of documenting the games. But instead of capturing powerful stories from wounded warriors, the lens was allegedly focused on herself, her entrances, her speeches, her wardrobe changes. Carefully staged, curated, controlled, and the optics devastating. What was supposed to be a platform for heroes was quickly morphing into the Meghan Show, complete with behind-the-scenes drama, staged moments, and whispers of retakes ordered mid-event to perfect the emotional arc of their upcoming Netflix docuseries. To the outside world, it looked polished. But behind the scenes, it was chaos, controlled chaos, with one name whispered in every production room, Meghan. And that begs the question, when did this stop being a tribute to veterans and start being a set piece for celebrity redemption? For years, the Invictus Games had been a lifeline. Wounded veterans from around the world trained for months, even years, to earn a spot on the global stage. Not for fame, not for profit, but to prove to themselves and others that they were still whole, still powerful, still worth celebrating. But in 2023, many of them say they felt invisible, buried beneath Netflix cameras, VIP security, and royal photo ops. The actual heroes of the games were, reportedly, pushed to the background of the very event created to spotlight them. Athletes claimed they were not invited to key media events. Others were told they had to clear the area for Harry and Meghan's private walkthroughs. One competitor described how his team's scheduled interview was abruptly canceled because Netflix needed a clean shot of Meghan's entrance. Let that sink in. Wounded warriors, amputees, trauma survivors, cancer fighters were treated like props in a documentary that was supposed to celebrate them. Even worse, multiple veterans say they were barely featured in official coverage. The official footage, they claim, focused more on slow-motion shots of Meghan and Harry holding hands than it did on the athletes who trained through pain and setbacks to even make it to the games. One former soldier, who lost both legs in combat, said it bluntly, "We weren't the story. We were the backdrop." And the bitterness didn't stop at the competitors. Donors, especially those who gave with the expectation that their money would directly support adaptive sports equipment and rehabilitation services, are now demanding answers and refunds.
When you grow up, it's your character that matters most. And nothing would make his mum and me prouder than to see him have the character of what we see before us today. You as a community.
Sponsors are pulling back. Veteran advocacy groups are releasing statements of concern. Even some of the most loyal supporters of Invictus are now questioning whether the games have lost their soul, replaced by a glitzy PR machine for two people trying to salvage their Hollywood brand. The betrayal cuts deep, not because the games are flawed, but because they used to be sacred. And now, for many veterans, the message is painfully clear. They were used for photo ops, used for documentaries, used as camouflage in a scandal that's no longer hiding in the shadows. And as the outrage grows louder, the pressure is mounting. The story is no longer just about budget lines and missing millions. It's about trust and the people who risked everything only to be treated like background noise in their own narrative. What began as whispers inside Invictus corridors has now exploded into full-blown legal warfare. Dusseldorf officials, already under intense public pressure, have reportedly launched a formal financial probe into how the game's $40 million budget was spent, and more specifically, how nearly $30 million of that appears to have vanished into luxury spending, vague contracts, and undocumented executive needs. This isn't just a public relations mess. This is shaping up to be a criminal investigation. Legal experts across Germany and the UK are already sounding the alarm. If it's proven that funds, especially taxpayer funds, were misappropriated or commingled with private interests like Netflix or Archewell, the implications could be catastrophic. We're talking civil lawsuits from donors and sponsors, tax fraud investigations, potential revocation of charitable status, even criminal charges related to embezzlement or financial misconduct. And here's where it gets worse for Harry and Meghan, because the line between their public charity work and private brand building has always been blurry. They've filmed docuseries under the veil of philanthropy. They've built a personal media empire using footage from events like Invictus. And according to insiders, that footage may be the smoking gun.
But also highly competitive internationally.
Yes, of course, highly competitive. But for those of people who are asking what was that all about, there was no one else that I can think of that was going to top.
Sources claim that behind-the-scenes clips captured during the 2023 games show instances of veterans being shuffled off camera to create clean shots of Meghan and Harry. One former staffer described the atmosphere as a controlled reality show, complete with reshoots and scripted cues. If those recordings are subpoenaed or leaked, they could confirm what whistleblowers have already warned, that the Sussexes didn't just participate in the games, they allegedly packaged it for profit. And then there's the money trail. Investigators are now combing through internal emails, payment logs, vendor contracts, and security invoices. They want to know who approved the spending, what oversight was in place, and whether charity money was used to fund a royal lifestyle. The chair of the Invictus Games Foundation, Lindsay, is reportedly leading the charge with a simple mission: protect the games no matter the fallout. And he's allegedly told colleagues behind closed doors, if we have to cut the head off the beast, so be it. It's a war for the soul of Invictus. And Harry, he may soon be standing in court, not as a founder, but as a defendant. While Harry battles fire abroad, another door is quietly slamming shut at home. Behind the walls of Buckingham Palace, the silence has been deafening. Not a statement, not a defense, not even a whisper of support for the man who once proudly wore the family crest into combat. According to palace insiders, that silence isn't just indifference, it's strategy. Because sources now claim that King Charles and Prince William have severed all remaining royal ties to the Invictus Games behind closed doors. The initiative, once celebrated as a proud piece of the monarchy's modern legacy, has now been branded a liability. One royal aide reportedly called it a ticking time bomb we want no part of. There will be no public endorsements, no appearances, no royal funding, no rescue mission. In fact, Invictus has reportedly been scrubbed from future palace planning sessions, and its connections to the Royal Foundation are being dissolved. What was once a symbol of royal duty and global service is now seen as a PR landmine, and the royals are sprinting for cover. Even Prince William, who once supported the games alongside Harry, has privately distanced himself, allegedly refusing to comment even in private conversations. The message couldn't be clearer. You're on your own now. And for Harry, that may be the final blow. Because Invictus wasn't just a charitable project, it was his proof, his badge of honor. The one thing he could hold up in interviews and say, I'm more than just the spare. I've done something meaningful. Now, with the palace abandoning ship, the games collapsing under scandal, and the media turning hostile, the Sussexes are running out of allies.
He then parried with another statement thanking him for all his service. Dominic Reed is a former soldier, so this is something that's very close to his heart. And he really sort of...
The Netflix deal may survive for now. Spotify is already gone. Archewell is teetering. And Invictus, their strongest pillar, is being ripped apart from every angle. The fall from grace isn't just public, it's institutional. And the people who once stood behind them in full military regalia are now watching quietly from the sidelines, hoping their silence speaks louder than words ever could. If Invictus falls, it won't just take down a charity event. It could collapse the entire house of cards that is brand Sussex. Everything Harry and Meghan have built since leaving the royal family, the Netflix documentaries, the Archewell Foundation, the speaking engagements, the public image campaigns, they all lean on one critical foundation: the belief that they're doing good, that they are, at heart, forces for change, that their fame is in service of something greater than themselves. But scandals like this don't just tarnish a reputation, they detonate it. Right now, the Archewell Foundation is under review by watchdogs in both the United States and the United Kingdom. If even a fraction of the financial mismanagement allegations hold up, misuse of funds, lack of transparency, commingling with Netflix expenses, the foundation could lose its charitable status. And when that happens, the dominoes fall fast. Donors walk. Corporate partners exit quietly. Media brands stop returning your calls. And suddenly, change-makers become headline cautionary tales. Netflix, who reportedly paid up to $100 million for exclusive Sussex content, is now facing its own backlash. Some of their top executives are being named in German and UK tabloid reports as potential enablers of the reality show atmosphere that overtook the 2023 Invictus Games. One German official was quoted saying, "It felt less like a charity event and more like a red carpet rollout for a streaming platform." Ouch. Spotify has already pulled the plug. Meghan's podcast was axed after one season, and the PR around its cancellation was anything but subtle. Now, all eyes are on Netflix.
Have overcome immense challenges, and together you are healing and teaching the world as you go.
If leaked footage, whistleblower emails, or budget breakdowns confirm that cameras were prioritized over competitors, or worse, that charity money was used to stage scenes for personal gain, Netflix may be forced to cut ties to save face. And without Invictus, without Archewell, without Netflix, what's left? A hollow brand, a broken promise, and a once golden couple surrounded by lawsuits, investigations, and silence. This isn't just a bad week for the Sussexes. This could be the beginning of the end. It's hard to believe this is where Prince Harry's story has landed. From the battlefields of Afghanistan to standing beside wounded heroes, from launching a global charity to now facing legal fire over missing millions. This isn't the arc anyone expected. The Invictus Games were supposed to be his legacy, the proof that he could step outside the shadow of the crown, make a difference, and write a new chapter on his own terms. But now, that legacy is in freefall, entangled in scandal, secrecy, and the very kind of royal drama he once vowed to escape. And the questions are piling up. Did Harry knowingly approve the spending? Was Meghan really the one pulling the strings? Did Netflix push the games into reality TV territory? And most importantly, were the veterans ever really the priority? Only time, and court documents, will tell. But one thing is certain, the Invictus Games are no longer just a sporting event. They're a battlefield of reputation, integrity, and survival. And Prince Harry is standing dead center. The next few months will decide everything: his credibility, his foundation, his future. Because if the Sussexes can't recover from this, if the games collapse, if the lawsuits mount, if whistleblowers release the receipts, then history won't remember Invictus as a triumph of the human spirit. It will remember it as the scandal that burned down everything Harry built after the crown. And this time, no royal title can save him.